Well, this is interesting. Very interesting. And it's almost a character test in many ways. The federal government, the Morrison government, has vowed to press ahead with its so-called union-busting, I hate that word, legislation. Now, it is important legislation, despite what's being described as a shock defeat yesterday in the Senate. One Nation sided with Labor and the Greens to oppose the Ensuring Integrity Bill. I'm sure they could have come up with a better name. The vote was tied 34-all, meaning the motion for the legislation was lost, and the government, in the words of one report, was blind-sided. The Attorney-General Christian Porter, who believed he had the backing of One Nation after he agreed to its proposed amendments, said, quote, "It's for Pauline Hanson to explain why she voted against a bill that met every requirement she sought through extensive consultation." He said, "This is important reform which seeks to ensure that registered organisations obey the law. We remain committed to this reform and will be seeking to reintroduce the bill at an appropriate time. That appropriate time, with only 1 week of Senate sittings remaining, is likely to be in the new year." Pauline Hanson says she and fellow One Nation Senator Malcolm Roberts, who's very bright, voted against the bill because it gave, quote, "unfettered powers," unquote, to administrators if they were appointed to registered organisations, including unions. She says, "We have seen the highly questionable behaviour of administrators, liquidators, receivers and managers." You're dead right. I've just come from some of that stuff in the bush. "Exercise unlimited power." Boy, oh boy, I don't think even Pauline Hanson knows what she's saying there. In relation to farmers, I never knew anyone could walk onto your farm and just take your assets and tell the farmer if he did anything, you would be arrested for obstructing the operation on your own farm. Pauline Hanson says it gives unfettered powers, and she said, "We have seen the highly questionable behaviour of administrators, liquidators, receivers and managers exercise unlimited power on their appointment by the banks in the One Nation Senate inquiry into rural bank lending practices." She said, "Under no circumstance was I going to unleash their unlimited power and zero accountability on Australian unions or any other registered organisation." It's a very, very powerful point. Unfortunately, I can't amplify it as I'd like to. I'm still doing some work. She said, "Over recent weeks we've seen rampant white-collar crime exposed." This is banks, of course, involving tens of millions of breaches by Westpac, with no effort from the bank or this government to deal with their illegal actions. Let me just make a preliminary comment here, which I will refer to later as well. There is, and you'll read all about this today, there is an arrogance, but far worse, I think, a sense of entitlement emerging about the Morrison government, and the electorate don't like it. I've just seen this in the bush. There are headlines today on this issue, namely that the government are reeling after a so-called shock vote by Pauline Hanson has harpooned their signature laws aimed at cracking down on unions. Now, of course, the union crackdown via legislation is long overdue. But the rules shouldn't apply just to unions. What about the unfettered power, which Pauline Hanson talked about, of other entities? The two One Nation senators and Jackie Lambie have denied the government the votes needed to pass the Ensuring Integrity Bill. The coalition is saying Pauline Hanson repeatedly guaranteed she'd support the bill. She denies that. I believe her. But, what a strange morality operates within the Morrison government leadership. Their legislation was important to them, and yes, to the nation, and they expected Pauline Hanson to support it. But is this the same Pauline Hanson whom the same government vilified during the last federal election when the Prime Minister insisted his party put Senator Hanson's party behind the Labor Party on how to vote cards in the May federal election? And now they believe they're entitled to her vote. Is this the same government when Pauline Hanson presented legislation to the Senate to guarantee a minimum farm gate price for the dairy farmer? Is this the same government that voted in its entirety, every Liberal and every National Party member of the Parliament voted against the Pauline Hanson dairy legislation? Yet it's the same government that now expects Pauline Hanson to fall over herself and do the government's bidding. The arrogance in all of this and the blind ingratitude of the leadership have now given Labor a victory, the like of which they could never have expected after the May election. Some of these people in government had better learn. They're good at asking, they're good at expecting, they're good at taking, but the sense of giving back and appreciating completely deserts them. And when that behaviour takes root in any individual or organisation, there's only one outcome: defeat, which hopefully brings back a sense of reality. The union-bashing legislation has been defeated. They wanted Pauline Hanson's vote. But in the election just gone, the federal election, they publicly vilified the same woman and her party and stuck her below the Labor Party on the how to vote ticket. If those two issues don't add up to arrogance, nothing does. What's the old saying about the chickens coming home to roost?